have been busy over the month of June because they've been in An Griannan Theatre for the most part because they're An Griannan artists in residence, and they've been working on a new production called On a House Like a Fire. And it's a mother-daughter story, and it's told through glimpses of memorabilia and fragments of memory, and there's a great score as well performed live. I'm delighted now that Michelle Reid joins us live on the show, and we're streaming as well. Michelle, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, John. Thanks very much for having me on.
It's good to talk. And good to talk about this production. So the last month has been productive.
It's been really productive. Yeah, we've had a fantastic time. It's wonderful to be supported by An Griannan and all the amazing staff there. So Patricia McBride, the director, and Niall Cranny, the technical manager, and Jude Barriscale has been our stage manager. So we've had fantastic support to put this show together.
But it's not just in An Griannan, or it's not just about this show, because you've been doing a couple of things beyond that as well over the course of the month.
Yeah, I've been working with through the Donegal libraries, so doing some creative writing. So I worked, it was actually the Diamond Writers Group who hosted us in Raffo, and a few other people came along to that session. And that sort of creative writing was, I suppose, drawing on the process from which I wrote this piece, because this piece is a sort of memoir and a kind of elegy as a piece of performance, because it's about my experience of my mom, trying to remember my mom through the things that I've kept. So we were kind of looking at that in the creative writing process, and everybody brought along an object that for them carried memories, significant memories of somebody, often somebody they'd lost. Because often it's not the expensive things, you know, like we have the things we keep, like the good china, but maybe the good china doesn't hold the memories. I mean, sometimes it does, but often it's that wooden spoon. You know, I mean, I remember I was doing a workshop in Dublin with a lady who talked about a wooden spoon and how she remembered her mam in a baby's bath doing the Christmas puddings and mixing all the ingredients and everybody getting to have a stir with the spoon. And she's kept that spoon because it just triggers all those memories. So that's kind of what we were doing. We were looking at objects and we were writing a little bit about our experiences of those objects and what they contain for us, what they carry.
And the wooden spoon is a great example because it's just so personal, and the way you described it there about the memories of everybody taking the turn at mixing. Whereas other things can be just a little bit more maybe contrived, whether it's a diary or photographs or something, but something is, and there's other examples within the production of things that remind you of your mum, and then there's I suppose the little bits of film and writing and so on that you would expect to see in a production like this.
Yes, I suppose it becomes narrative. There becomes a story in it. So, but I was working with the idea of sort of fragments and the different ways those come to you. So through objects, and I do mention objects, also through photographs. So we see sort of glimpses of photographs. And of course, now we all have photographs on our phones. So that idea of the physical object and keeping the physical object. And sometimes when I'm doing work with young people, I think young people are quite interested in objects again now because they don't have as many. So that idea of vinyl coming back or physical photos, wanting to print them out. So it's interesting about Instamatic cameras making a comeback because, you know, we were all sort of shaking those pictures. So I do think it's interesting about our connection to objects. So it's that with the photos as well. I think also then with the writing is how do you try and recreate a sense of memory? Because memory isn't like a film. You know, you can't just replay it. It's not like that home video. You remember things and you remember them in a sort of fragmentary way, I think sometimes. And then things like smell can say, we all know that, you know. So there's a bit of sensory reflection in the piece as well. If I smell hairspray, it reminds me of my mum. So yeah, I think all of those, trying to put all of those things into the piece. So to talk about my own personal experience, but to make it universal, that other people would understand that. And I think that's also where the music came in, and kind of working with Brian early on in the process I had never worked with music before. And I think when I was saying, I'm sort of struggling with how to write this, I want it to be very kind of broken down, little fragments of memory. And he started to play me a score or a piece of music that he'd been working on that was about echoes. And it was really beautiful. And I said, oh, well, will you develop this music for the show? So he started developing that music specifically for this show. And when we first developed the show for Age and Opportunity and the Bealtaine Festival last year, we had to do the show online, obviously, because of COVID. So this is our first opportunity. This is the live premiere. And what's even more special for us is getting to work with a live string quartet. Mm. And Brian's been working with the string quartet. So to have that music played live is really magical.
Yeah, and with the conductor Victoria Lamo, and it sounds like it sounds like a great mix, and it'll all come together when and it'll all make sense as well when there's a live audience there.
Totally, yes.
And then you feed off the reactions. And you also touched, when you were chatting there about memories, you touched on the subject of living with Alzheimer's.
That's right. My mum lived with Alzheimer's at the end of her life. I mean, she coped with it really well, and she managed very well, and she had support in that. But it's interesting as well about how when memory disappears and how people living with dementia or with Alzheimer's often hold on to longer term memories and how important they are, but that the holes in the memory can come at different places. I think music works really well as well for memory. We remember songs, they stay with us. But I think also just that the story of people's stories are really important for carers or for families to be able to, share with carers, to understand who a person is because of their story and who they were. You might meet a person when they're older and maybe when they're suffering from Alzheimer's or experiencing that. But of course, they have been all these other people in their life. They've been that 5-year-old on the trike. They've been a young person dancing on the dance floor. They've been all these people. So I think looking back at my mum's life again after she passed away, it was really interesting to remember and I didn't know her before I was born, but as I was a child, remembering the person she was throughout her life was a really helpful process, really interesting process. It was a sort of deep dive after the grief of losing my mum. So I started to make this show quite a while afterwards, where I could really kind of process all these little pieces of memory, the photographs, the objects, the things that I'd saved, and the things I wished I'd saved from the house. It's when you're clearing a space and you're just sort of not sure what you should keep. It's very interesting because, those things like the wooden spoon you maybe let go of. Yeah. And you keep the good china and you wished you'd done it the other way around.
And just watching it may trigger memories for people, or the items that you use may trigger off memories for people, and they only then realize that, actually we have one of those, and come to think of it, Dad used to use it all the time or whatever. So it's such on one level such a simple premise from the most common items found in any house. Imro O'Kelly in the Sunday Independent has described it as a beautifully crafted piece of writing and performance, and we can see it for ourselves tomorrow night and on Saturday nights for 2 nights only in An Griannan Theatre in Letterkenny on A House Like a Fire. And Michelle Reid, the best of luck with it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, John.
Serving the Northwest for over 40 years, explore our showroom with more than 40 displays